everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures, and today I'm back with my final day, day 16 of my 2020 holiday card series. And for this one, I used the adorable Christmas Fishes stamp set by Lawn Fawn. I just stamped all of my images onto Neenah Solar White cardstock, and now I'm just using Copic markers to color them in. For my underwater Christmas tree, I'm using G46. Then blending that out with G43. And then I'm just using G20 as my lightest shade. I just forgot to color the bottom part there. And I'm sorry, G40. This is actually the only marker I own in the classic form of the Copic marker. When placing an online order, I accidentally ordered the wrong one. But it's working fine as well, so I don't really mind. I did want to have some variation in shade on my on those seaweed Christmas trees, so I'm bringing in the BG75. Wanted it to be a bit darker, so the BG78, blending that out with BG75. Then going in with BG72, but those colors ended up being way different in tone, again with the BG70 as my lightest shade. But then I just ended up going over the entire BG colored pieces with the G20, and that just brought those shades much closer together, and I ended up liking that a lot better. Here I'm just going over everything with a G40, and that just kind of brings those colors closer together. And I just used the same color in all of the little seaweed pieces. For my Santa, I'm using BG markers as well. I'm using BG9 as my darkest shade. Blending that out with BG05. Just pulling the color down a little bit further, because most of the left part of his head will be covered with the Christmas hat anyways. Then I'm blending that out with BG01. Then going in with BG000. I just went in there with a little bit more of the BG01 and then BG000. For my reds, I'm using R89 as my darkest shade. Blending that out with R85. And those colors are a little bit difficult to blend, especially on large areas like this, so I'm just using the tip-to-tip technique to blend the R89 and the R85. Then I'm blending that out with R83, and then coming in with R81, going back in with R83 just to get a smoother transition, again with the R85. And then using R81 as my highlight shade. Just softening the edges with the R83 again. Then for my purple shades, I'm using V09 as my darkest shade, because those will be my, reindeer fish, I suppose. Just using V06 as my second to darkest shade. Then blending that out with V05. in with V01. And now I'm just using V000 as my highlight shade. Just bringing in more of the V01. For the yellow / gold parts of my card, I'm using Y28, YR23, Y15, and Y11. That creates a really nice, like, bright yellow gold color, which I really like. And I just color the other images in the same combinations off camera. For my little rocks, I'm using C7, C5, C3, and C1. And on the seashells, I'm also bringing in C0 just to keep them really light. On the hats, I'm using C00. Then I die cut one of the Slimline stitched Hillside borders, and I don't have a blending mat that's large enough, and I didn't want the panel to move. I used removable tape runner on the back and just added it to my glass mat, and the adhesive just wipes off clean off the glass mat. So it's just really handy to do it this way. I'm just using antique linen tea dye, and I'm also bringing in some vintage photo for my sand panel. And I'm also adding splatters of the same colors and also a little bit of the walnut stain. Just adding lots of splatters for added interest. And I really like that this is kind of an unusual Christmas card, but I think it's so fun to, imagine underwater critters also celebrating Christmas with a seaweed Christmas tree, and I think it's just so cute. For my background, I'm using tumbled glass, salty ocean, mermaid lagoon, and chipped sapphire. I made sure to leave the top part of my panel lightest, and now I'm just bringing in the chipped sapphire from the bottom up. Just wiping off my brush to smooth out the edges so that I wouldn't muddle up all of the colors. Going back in with mermaid lagoon and just blending the colors back and forth until the blend is as I would like it. Then going back in with mermaid lagoon and also with salty ocean. Just going back and forth. And then bringing the tumbled glass in from the top. Now I just used a water sprayer, and I'm just blotting off the excess with my paper towel just so that it creates the look of splatters. And now I'm just using a Sunray stencil by MFT and Lawn Fawn's Yeti white pigment ink, and I'm just adding a few rays on my panel. I would have loved to have a slimline version of this, but I didn't, so I just made sure to stay away from the edges so that it looks like it's naturally fades out there. Then I also used the chipped sapphire and the mermaid lagoon and also the liquid stardust by Lawn Fawn to add lots of splatters of all of those colors, just so it adds a bit more interest to my panel. Like I did on previous videos, I didn't have the matching cardstock colors, so I used the R80 markers to color in a strip of cardstock, and I die cut it with a Lawn Fawn banner die, and I just stamped the season's greetings from the stamp set, which I think is just so funny. I love punny sentiments. And I used the Wow embossing powder in white and the super fine version. And after I was done with that, I just used a baby wipe to clear off any of the excess embossing powder. I just cut out a panel of red cardstock just as a mat for my panel. And I actually intended it to be a slimline card, but I went with the 8.5 by 4.25 size. So I just added that down at the top so that there's an 1/8 inch border around the two sides and the top. because I knew that the bottom would be covered by my sand panel, so it worked out fine. I added those with some foam tape, and I added liquid glue to the back of my foam tape so that I get the dimension of the foam tape, but I can still like wiggle it around if I have to. I didn't color in like the little circles on my Santa because I knew that I would be covering them up anyways with a hat. I'm just adding some presents into the sleigh. And now I'm just trying to figure out the best placement for all of my images. I did color like 3 reindeer fish, but I only really had room for 2. I did decide to just be brave and adhere it on my panel, because this is just the best way to gauge where everything needs to go. Trying to be careful not to use a lot of glue so that I don't accidentally already glue them on. Just moving them around slightly so that they're angled the way I would like it. Then I also added some additional elements to my fish. I did cut off the base white border of the hats so that it looks more seamless, and the critters' faces aren't covered with a white border. And I just added those, which I think, oh my god, that jellyfish and the puffer fish with the Santa hat are just so adorable. I just used some foam squares on the back of my images, and now I already placed down the sentiment roughly where I would want it, just so that I could gauge where everything else needs to go. I'm adding all of the seaweeds and all of those images with liquid glue and some with foam tape on the top as well. This is actually where I realized that I needed to move it a little bit, so it's so, I never learn. I always like stick things down and then I realize, well, I didn't want it there, so I just peel them back up. But it's working fine so far, so I don't mind it too much. I just made sure to alternate the angle in which those seaweeds are, so that there's a little bit more movement. And then I also just added the little presents and the rocks just below the Christmas tree. And then I added foam tape to the back of the remaining critters, and I just added them to my scene. I did want the little jellyfish to be behind the seaweed, so I just removed the foam tape from that and I just used liquid glue to stick that down. And then I trimmed off the excess of the sentiment strip and I just placed that down with foam tape as well. And now it's time to embellish. I'm using the Nouveau Aqua Shimmer Pen and Glitter Gloss, just adding lots of shine. And then I'm using the Nouveau Crystal Glaze. And I'm just adding that to the ornaments on the Christmas tree just to make them shiny. And I also used it on the star on top. And then I'm bringing in my favorite Stardust stickles. And I'm just adding them to the Santa hats of all of my critters. And I also decided to add a little bit to the bows of the presents. Decided to go in with a little bit more shine on the gold elements of my sleigh. And then I'm also adding a little bit of the crystal glaze on the top part of the sleigh. And also on the reins connecting them on the, well, basically the gold areas. And that finishes off my card for today. I really hope you like it. I had a lot of fun making it, and I just think it's so cool to have like a non-traditional Christmas card, but it's still just so cute with all of those little happy looking critters. And this completes the final day of my 2020 holiday card series. I had so much fun making lots of different holiday themed projects and cards. I hope to make many more next year. I hope you'll join me. I will take a little bit of a break and I will be back shortly with new videos. I wish you a Merry Christmas if you celebrate, and if you don't, I hope you have a wonderful end of the year. To all of you, a happy and healthy 2021, and I hope to see you soon again. Have a wonderful day. Bye!